3 connectors. That's all that's holding the tracker into a late model Ford. 2 antenna leads and 1 power and data plug tucked under the trunk floor of an Escape or bolted behind the back seat of an F-150. I've had my hands on it. The factory will tell you that box is there for your safety. Crash notification, stolen vehicle recovery, roadside assist. And that part's true. But it is also a permanent, always-on cellular link that records where you go, how fast you got there, and how hard you braked, and it phones every bit of it home every single day you drive. Which is why a growing number of Ford, Toyota, and Ram owners quit trusting the safety pitch, went under the dash with a flashlight and a socket set, found that box, and unplugged it. I'm going to walk you through the 7 things they found when they did, and what it cost them. And number 1 is the thing the dealership will never say to your face, and I spent enough years on a dealer floor to know exactly why. First, understand what this thing actually is, because the factory works awful hard to make sure you never think about it. It's not the navigation screen. It's not your phone connection. It's a separate piece of hardware about the size of a paperback book with its own cellular antenna and its own SIM card, wired into the car back at the factory. Owners call it the tracker. The engineers call it a telematics control unit, or a data communication module, or a telematics box, depending on the brand. Different names, same job. It listens to the car's own internal network, and it sends what it hears back to the manufacturer over a cellular connection you can't see and were never once asked to approve. All right, 7 things, counting down. Number 7, that module was never something you chose. When you bought your truck, you signed for the engine, the trim, the tow package. You did not sign for the telematics box because it was never put in front of you as a choice. Since about 2019, damn near every Ford, Toyota, and Ram coming off the line has one built right in, the same way the steering column is built in. Toyota calls its version the Data Communication Module. Ford calls its the Telematics Control Unit. Ram, built by Stellantis, calls its the Telematics Box Module. 3 names, 1 job. And here's the part that gets under people's skin. That box has a live cellular connection from the second the vehicle rolls off the lot. It does not wait for you to download an app. It does not wait for a free trial to end. A Consumer Reports investigation back in 2024 confirmed that BMW, Ford, Toyota, and Honda were all pulling driving data off their connected cars. The hardware is already there, already powered, already listening. It was sold to you as a feature. It was installed as a condition. Number 6, turning it off in the menu does almost nothing. And this is the one that turns mild worry into something colder. When folks first get uneasy about this, they do the reasonable thing. They dig into the vehicle settings, they find the Connected Services screen, and they switch data sharing off. They cancel the Ford Pass services, or the Toyota subscription, or the Uconnect package, and they figure it's handled. It is not. One Toyota RAV4 owner documented that even after he opted out of every connected service he could find, even after he canceled the safety line, the car kept right on transmitting to Toyota through its built-in cellular connection. On a Ford Lightning, an owner pulled the cellular modem out entirely, and the truck was still reporting its location by satellite. That gap is not an oversight. The Mozilla Foundation went through 25 car brands for a privacy report, and of those 25, exactly 2 gave drivers a real way to delete their data, and both of those 2 are sold only in Europe, where the privacy laws have some teeth. The off switch they handed you was built to make you feel better. It was not built to make the box stop. Number 5. We already know exactly what that data is worth because one company got caught selling it. For years, the obvious question hung over all of this. So what if the car phones home? Who would actually want that, and what would they do with it? In March of 2024, a New York Times investigation answered it, and the answer was worse than the skeptics had guessed. General Motors had been collecting detailed driving behavior off millions of its vehicles, not just location, hard braking, sudden acceleration, late-night trips, every stretch of road you took over the limit. For some drivers, sampled as often as every 3 seconds. Then GM handed it to 2 data brokers, Verisk and LexisNexis, who packaged it into reports and sold it straight to the insurance industry. One Chevy Bolt owner requested his file from LexisNexis. What came back ran 258 pages, logging 640 separate trips over 6 months. He only went looking because his insurance premium had jumped 21%. Another driver got turned down by 7 insurers in a row before an agent finally told him why. His own car had reported on him. California finished its investigation, and GM agreed to pay $12.75 million, the biggest penalty ever handed down under that state's privacy law. And the Federal Trade Commission had already barred GM from sharing that data for 5 years. And GM was not the only name in the trade. A Senate investigation found that Hyundai had handed driving data off 1.7 million cars to Verisk and got paid a little over $1 million for it. That works out to about 61 cents a car. 61 cents was the going rate for a year of knowing where 1.7 million families drove. GM did not get punished for building the system. It got punished for being caught using it. Number 4. Ford owners were the first to start pulling it out. Because of the 3, Ford's is the easiest to reach. On a 2019 Escape, the telematics unit sits under the trunk floor, right beneath the spare tire cover. On the F-150 and the Super Duty, it's bolted to the driver's side rear wall of the cab behind the back seat. A flashlight, a plastic trim tool, and about 20 minutes is all most owners need to lay eyes on it. What they find is a small module with 3 plugs, 2 antenna cables, and 1 that carries power and data. There's a guide floating around an owner's forum, written by a Ford man who just plain did not want his Escape reporting his fuel level and his odometer back to headquarters, and it walks the whole job. Find the module, unplug the 3 connectors, and, in his own dry words, optionally discard the module in the dealership parking lot on your way out. Now there's a real cost here, and the honest owners say so straight. Pull that box, and you lose automatic crash notification. You lose the app that starts the truck from your kitchen. You lose stolen vehicle tracking. For some people, that trade is unthinkable. For others, a truck that can't call for help is also a truck that can't report on its driver. Ford did not lock the module away. A lot of owners took that as permission. Number 3. Toyota buried it deeper, so owners engineered a way around it. Toyota made the job harder. On a Highlander or a Tacoma, that data module isn't hiding under a trunk panel. It sits behind the passenger side of the dash, right next to the main computer, and getting to it can mean pulling the glove box, the vents, and a long run of trim. And there's a catch waiting. Disconnect the Toyota module the crude way, and you lose your front right speaker and your hands-free microphone, because Toyota ran them right through it. So owners did something the factory never planned for. They built a part, a little bundle of connectors, costs around $20, called a bypass harness. You unplug the factory module, you plug the harness into the empty connectors, and the harness quietly tells the car the module is still there, but permanently out of cellular range. Your speaker works, your microphone works, the car just stops phoning home. And that little harness matters more than it looks, because Toyota's connected data is handled by a company tied to Toyota's own insurance arm, And after about 60 days of driving, they can use what they've gathered to send you a personalized insurance quote. The bypass harness ends that conversation before it can start. Toyota made the module hard to remove. Owners just made it easy to ignore. Number 2. Ram made it the hardest of all, and it still was not enough. If Toyota made removal inconvenient, Ram, under its parent company Stellantis, made it a genuine engineering problem. On a modern Ram, you cannot just unplug the telematics box and walk away. The truck notices. It throws network errors across the dash, and Ram guards its diagnostic port behind a security gateway, a gatekeeper module that blocks the deeper access an owner would need. So the Ram community went further than anybody. First, they install a security gateway bypass harness, a small connector that opens that diagnostic port back up. Then they physically pull the telematics box. Then, with laptop software, they go into the truck's body control computer and rewrite the settings one at a time, telling the truck the box is gone, the cellular radio is gone, the GPS is gone, so it quits hunting for hardware that isn't there anymore. One owner who finished the job on a 2022 Ram summed up the result in 3 words. The truck was offline. Another said what he was really after. He wanted to turn his truck back into a 1990 sedan, a vehicle that did its job and told nobody about it. And to get there on a $70,000 pickup, he had to bypass a security gate, pull a module, and reprogram the computer with aftermarket software. Ram did not make tracking optional. It made privacy a project. Number 1. The people who sold you the truck will not help you do this, and that silence is the most honest answer you are ever going to get. Across all 3 brands, owners run into the same wall. They call the manufacturer's line and they ask, in plain English, how to permanently shut off the data module. One Toyota Highlander owner did exactly that. The brand engagement center sent him to the dealer. Not can't, won't. And that refusal answers the question this whole list has been circling. If that module existed purely for your safety and your convenience, they would gladly show you the off switch. They show you the off switch for the seatbelt chime. They show you the off switch for the lane keep nudge. But the data module is the one piece of equipment in your vehicle that the people who built it will not help you control. That is the tell. A feature that serves you is one you are allowed to refuse. A feature you are not allowed to refuse is not really a feature. It is an arrangement, and you were not the party it was arranged for. Step back from the wiring and the part numbers, and the story is the same across all 3. For 100 years, when you bought a car, you owned an object. It sat in your driveway. It answered to you, and what you did with it was nobody's business. That quietly ended. The telematics box turned the car into something closer to a smartphone, a thing that works for you and watches you at the same time and reports back to a company whose interests are not yours. General Motors showed the whole country what that watching is worth on the open market. Pennies a car to sell. A near $13 million fine when it got caught, and a 21% jump in one ordinary man's insurance bill. The owners pulling these modules aren't winning exactly. They lose crash notification. They lose convenience. They spend their weekends under the dash with a flashlight. But they have understood something the rest of the market hasn't caught up to yet. If something sitting in your own driveway will not obey you, it doesn't really belong to you. I'm Hank. About 40 years turning wrenches, the last stretch of it on a dealer floor. And I'll tell you, on that floor, this box was the one thing nobody was ever told to bring up. No manufacturer pays me, no dealer, no insurance company, and not one of them is glad I'm telling you this. So here's the real question, and it's one only you can answer for your own driveway. Is automatic crash help worth a permanent record of every trip you take? There is no universally right answer. There is only the one you would have picked if they had bothered to ask you, which they did not. Tell me in the comments which way you land, and name the year and model you drive when you do, because other owners reading are going to want to know whether yours is one of the easy ones or one of the fortresses. And next time, I'm taking one brand all the way down, the exact fuse, the exact module, by name, start to finish, so you can walk out to your own driveway and do it. Stick around for yours. Watch out for each other.